He, a skeptical tycoon, seeks an assistant. She, intelligent and ambitious, pursues the job. The night before the interview, she flirts intensely with a mysterious man. Shocked, Jessica discovers he's the CEO interviewing her, Victor Thorne. Before we start the story, leave a comment and tell us what city you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The rain hammered against the windows of the small apartment in Queens when Jessica Ramos switched off her alarm at 5:30 a.m. Another day began just like the others. A rush, a crowded subway, a job that barely paid the bills, and the increasingly distant dream of achieving something better for her and her mom. At 28, Jessica bore the weight of being the sole breadwinner since her father passed away 3 years prior. Her mother, Maria, suffered from arthritis and could no longer work as a seamstress. Her receptionist salary at a small accounting firm in Midtown barely covered the rent, her mother's medication, and basic expenses. While preparing breakfast, Jessica checked her resume one last time, printed on plain paper. She couldn't afford anything better. Today was the day. After weeks of sending out resumes, she'd finally landed an interview for the executive assistant position at one of the country's largest investment firms, Thorne Investments. "Honey, you're going to ace it," Maria said, straightening the borrowed blazer on her daughter's shoulders. "You're the smartest person I know." Jessica smiled, but inside her stomach churned with nerves. The position paid 3 times her current salary. It would be the solution to all of the family's financial problems. But she knew she was competing with far more qualified candidates, graduates from the best universities with degrees in English and French. Across town, on the top floor of a mirrored building in Manhattan, Victor Thorne woke up at 5 a.m. as he had every day for the past 15 years. At 39, he owned an empire he had built from scratch, transforming a small inheritance into billions through strategic investments and an almost supernatural ability to predict market trends. Victor didn't believe in coincidences or luck. He believed in hard work, discipline, and maintaining emotional distance from everything and everyone. Relationships were dangerous distractions, and he had learned that the hard way when Caroline, his ex-fiancée, had tried to sell privileged company information to competitors 5 years earlier. Since then, his life was mathematically perfect. Wake up at 5, gym, work until 11 p.m., sleep. Weekends were for analyzing reports and planning strategies. There was no room for unforeseen events or emotions. "Mr. Thorne," his current assistant, Patricia, intercomed, "the interviews for my replacement begin in 1 hour. I've left the selected resumes on your desk." Victor sighed. Patricia had resigned to get married and moved to London. Finding someone competent who could keep up with his work ethic and demands was nearly impossible. He'd already been through 7 assistants in the last 2 years. As he reviewed the resumes, one caught his eye. Not for its qualifications, which were modest compared to the other candidates, but for something in the cover letter. The words were carefully chosen, demonstrating intelligence and a genuine hunger for the opportunity. Jessica Ramos, graduated in business administration from a state university, limited experience, but something in her writing intrigued him. At 2 p.m., Jessica waited in the elegant lobby of Thorne Investments, trying to control her nerves. The other candidates looked like they'd stepped out of a business magazine. Expensive suits, designer handbags, the confidence of those who had always had everything. Jessica Ramos? A blonde and elegant woman called her name. "I'm Patricia, Mr. Thorne's assistant. He will see you now." Jessica's heart raced. She had researched everything about Victor Thorne online, his career, his businesses, even some photos at social events. She knew he was known for being extremely demanding and that many experienced executives trembled at the mere mention of his name. The office door opened and Jessica entered the most luxurious environment she had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of Central Park. But all of that disappeared from her mind when she saw the man behind the mahogany desk. Victor Thorne was even more imposing in person. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair with a few grey strands at the temples, and piercing green eyes that seemed to read her soul. When he stood up to greet her, Jessica felt her legs weaken. "Ms. Ramos," his voice was deep and seductive, "please have a seat." For a moment, when their eyes met and he extended his hand to shake hers, something electric passed between them. Victor felt a reaction he hadn't experienced in years, a genuine interest in someone that went far beyond the professional. Jessica, in turn, realized that Victor was looking at her differently than the other candidates, as if trying to decipher a mystery. There was intensity in those green eyes that made her forget where she was. The interview that was supposed to last 15 minutes stretched to 45. Victor found himself asking personal questions, wanting to know the woman behind the modest resume. Jessica, forgetting her nerves, responded with an honesty and intelligence that surprised him. "Tell me, Jessica," Victor leaned slightly forward, "why should I hire you when there are candidates with far more experience?" For a moment, Jessica hesitated, then something inside her ignited. "Because I'm hungry, Mr. Thorne. Hungry to learn, to grow, to prove that I deserve to be here. The other candidates may have more experience, but none of them need this opportunity as much as I do. And when someone really needs something, they make sure to give their best to not lose it." Victor studied her in silence for long seconds. There was passion in her words, an inner fire that he recognized. It was the same one that had driven him years ago when he started from nothing. "You're hired, Jessica. Start Monday at 7 a.m. Monday arrived like a hurricane in Jessica's life. At 6:30 a.m., she was already in the office, reviewing for the 10th time the notes she had taken on the company's procedures. The navy blue dress she had bought with her last savings made her feel more confident, even if it still stood out from the designer wardrobes of the other female employees. "Punctuality is essential for Mr. Thorne," Patricia instructed her as they walked through the corridors. "He doesn't tolerate lateness, disorganization, or incompetence. I've seen assistants fired for mistakes that other bosses wouldn't even notice." Jessica absorbed every word, determined not to disappoint. When Victor arrived at 7 o'clock sharp, she already had his coffee prepared exactly as he liked it. No sugar, extra strong, and his daily schedule organized by priority. "Good morning, Mr. Thorne," she said with a firm voice, handing him the documents for the first meeting. Victor stopped. Her voice, the subtle perfume, the elegant posture, it all affected him in a way he couldn't understand. "Good morning, Jessica." His eyes lingered on her face a second longer than was appropriate. During the first week, Jessica proved her competence. She learned quickly, anticipated needs, and managed to organize Victor's chaotic schedule with an efficiency that impressed even Patricia. But it was impossible to ignore the tension that grew between them. Victor found himself making excuses to call her into his office. "Jessica, I need you to review this contract," he'd say, when he could perfectly well ask via email. She would enter, her perfume would invade his senses, and for a few minutes he would completely forget about business. Jessica, in turn, felt her heart race every time Victor looked at her. There was something in his green eyes that made her forget to breathe. But she knew it was crazy. He was Victor Thorne, billionaire, powerful businessman, accustomed to sophisticated women from high society. She was just a girl from Queens who had landed her dream job. "You're doing great," commented Mary, the financial manager, during lunch. "But be careful. Victor Thorne is known to be seductive. I've seen several employees delude themselves into thinking they were special to him." Mary's words echoed in Jessica's mind all afternoon. When Victor called her in to review a presentation for an important client, she remained strictly professional, avoiding looking at him directly. "Is something wrong, Jessica?" Victor asked, noticing the change in her behavior. "You seem distant today." "Nothing wrong, Mr. Thorne, just focused on work." But Victor was too observant not to notice the barrier she had erected, and that intrigued him even more. All the women in his social circle threw themselves at him. Jessica was different, genuine, hardworking, and seemingly immune to his charm. It challenged him in a way he hadn't experienced in years. The situation became complicated when Isabella, a socialite and former flame of Victor's, appeared in the office on Thursday. Blonde, sculpted, Wearing a dress that cost more than Jessica's annual salary, she treated the new assistant as if she were invisible. "Vic, darling," Isabella purred, completely ignoring Jessica and heading straight to his office. "We need to talk about the charity gala next Saturday." "You can't go alone again." Jessica felt a pang of jealousy that surprised her. She had no right to feel anything. Victor wasn't hers, never would be. He was just her boss, and she needed to remember that. "Jessica," Victor called her after Isabella left, "I need you to organize my schedule for Saturday's event. It will be an important night for the company." "Of course, Mr. Thorne. Should I confirm that Miss Isabella will be accompanying you?" Victor noticed something in her tone of voice, a slight tremor, perhaps jealousy. The idea excited him more than it should have. "Haven't decided on an escort yet." That afternoon, while organizing the documents for the charity gala at the Waldorf Astoria, Jessica discovered it was more than just a party. It was the social event of the year, bringing together the business elite of New York City. She saw photos from previous years, dazzling women in haute couture dresses, powerful men in impeccable tuxedos. It was a world she would never belong to. "Are you going to the gala?" asked Susan, one of the longest tenured employees. "Me? Of course not. I'm just the assistant." "Too bad. It would be interesting to see how Victor behaves with you around. He can't take his eyes off you, you know." Jessica pretended not to pay attention to the comment, but the words kept echoing in her mind. That night, at home, while helping her mother with her medication, she couldn't stop thinking about Victor. "You seem different, honey," Maria observed. "More alive." "It's just the new job, Mom. It's challenging." But Jessica knew it was more than that. Victor Thorne had awakened feelings in her that she thought didn't exist. And that was dangerous for her heart and for her job. On Friday, the atmosphere in the office was tense. Victor seemed irritated, making and remaking the presentation for the event. Jessica noticed that he was nervous, something rare for a man always so in control. "Mr. Thorne," she said softly, "can I help with something?" Victor looked at her, and for a moment he let his guard down. "It's an important event, Jessica. Many deals will be closed that night. And He hesitated. "I'm not sure if I should go with an escort." "You always know what to do," she replied sincerely. "I'm sure you'll make the right choice." Their eyes met and remained connected for long seconds. Victor took a step toward her, and Jessica felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. He was so close that she could smell his masculine cologne, see the small lines around his green eyes. "Jessica, Victor began to speak but was interrupted by the phone ringing. The magic of the moment broke. Jessica recoiled, returning to her professional posture, while Victor answered the call with a frustrated expression. When he hung up, he looked at her once more. "Jessica, change of plans. I need you to come to the event tomorrow. There will be many details to coordinate, and I need someone I trust to ensure everything runs perfectly." Jessica's heart stopped. "But I don't have appropriate attire for such an event." Victor studied her for a moment. "That will be taken care of. A dress will be delivered to your apartment tomorrow morning. And Jessica," he approached again, "it's not a request. It's an order." The dress arrived at 10 in the morning, packaged in an elegant box with the logo of one of the most expensive boutiques in Manhattan. When Jessica opened the box, her mother gasped in admiration. It was a midnight blue model in pure silk with an impeccable cut that would flatter her figure without being vulgar. Along with it were shoes, a small handbag, and even discreet jewelry. "My God, honey," Maria whispered, delicately touching the fabric. "This must cost more than our rent for a year." Jessica felt a knot in her stomach. Victor's generosity made her uncomfortable and also confused. Why would he do this for a simple assistant? At 7 in the evening, the chauffeur sent by Victor picked her up. Throughout the ride to the Waldorf Astoria, Jessica tried to convince herself that she was only there to work. But when she arrived at the hotel's grand ballroom and saw Victor waiting for her in the lobby, wearing a tuxedo that enhanced his natural elegance, she knew she was lost. "You look breathtaking," Victor murmured, his eyes scanning her silhouette with an intensity that made her blush. Thank you for the dress, Mr. Thorne. You shouldn't have... Victor, he interrupted her softly. Tonight you can call me Victor. The ballroom was filled with New York's elite. Jessica recognized faces from newspapers and magazines, powerful business people, influential politicians, celebrities. She felt like an imposter, but Victor didn't leave her side, proudly introducing her as my executive assistant, Jessica Ramos. She's the one who keeps my life organized, he said with a smile that didn't go unnoticed by the more observant guests. During the first hour, Jessica remained professional, noting important contacts and organizing the business cards Victor received. But his constant proximity was getting to her nerves. His hand occasionally touched her back as he guided her through the crowd. His masculine scent enveloped her, and their gazes became increasingly intense. I need to introduce you to Edward Miller, Victor said, leading her to a gray-haired man, accompanied by a younger woman. Edward, this is Jessica Ramos, who I've been telling you about. Edward greeted Jessica warmly, but it was his companion who caught her attention. Camille Miller, she introduced herself with a genuine smile. Edward is my father, and you must be the famous assistant who managed to tame Victor Thorne. Tame? Jessica laughed nervously. He's different, Camille continued, watching Victor talk to her father. More human, if I may say so. Dad mentioned that you managed to organize in a week what the other assistants couldn't in months. As they talked, Jessica noticed that Victor frequently looked in their direction as if to make sure she was okay. There was something protective in his posture that warmed her from the inside. The night proceeded without incident until Isabella appeared, radiant in a gold dress that left little to the imagination. She approached Victor with the confidence of someone who believed she had rights over him. Victor, darling, you didn't pick me up, she said with a pout of censure. I thought we were coming together. We didn't agree on anything, Isabella, Victor replied coldly, but Jessica noticed the discomfort in his eyes. But we always go to events together. We make such a beautiful couple, Isabella insisted, possessively running her hand over his arm before noticing Jessica. Oh, the little assistant is here. How interesting. Isabella's disdainful tone made Jessica feel small. She took a step back, remembering her place, but Victor immediately placed himself between them. Jessica is here on business, he said with a firm voice, and I suggest you treat her with the respect she deserves. The tension in the air was palpable. Isabella looked from Victor to Jessica with a calculating expression before forcing a smile. Of course, darling. I didn't mean to offend the employee. She walked away, but Jessica realized she had made an enemy. I'm sorry about that, Victor murmured in her ear, his warm breath making her shiver. You don't have to apologize. She's right. I'm just the employee. Victor gently held her arm. You're not just anything, Jessica. Don't let anyone make you believe otherwise. The sincerity in his voice surprised her. For a moment she saw something vulnerable in his eyes, as if he also felt out of place in that world of appearances. Shall we get some air? Victor suggested, leading her to the balcony overlooking the city. The night air was cool, and the sound of the city created a more intimate atmosphere. They stood in silence for a few minutes, watching the lights. Can I ask a personal question? Jessica said, breaking the silence. Always. Why have you never married? I mean, you have everything, success, money, charm. Any woman would feel lucky. Victor laughed bitterly. You really think so? Yes. He turned to face her. I was engaged once, Caroline. I thought I loved her. I thought she loved me. I found out too late that she was more interested in my bank account and the privileged information she could obtain. Jessica saw the pain in his eyes and felt her heart clench. She sold information about an acquisition I was negotiating in secret. I almost lost $50 million because of her betrayal. Since then, he paused, since then I decided that relationships are unnecessary risks. But that was a long time ago. 5 years, and in 5 years, no woman has made me question that decision. He looked at her intensely. Until now, Jessica's heart raced. Victor, You scare me, Jessica, he continued, moving closer. Since you arrived, I can't stop thinking about you. I can't concentrate on work. You've messed up my whole organized life." They were so close now that she could see the golden flecks in his green eyes. The tension between them was almost tangible. "This can't happen," she whispered. "I'm your employee. You're my boss." It would be what? He raised his hand, almost touching her face. "It would be too complicated." Jessica took a step back, trying to maintain rationality. "And besides, you don't really know me. If you knew, what would I find out?" Jessica hesitated. How could she explain her difficult childhood? The constant struggle for money, the nights she went to bed hungry so her mother could eat. How could she tell about the humiliations she suffered for being poor, about the times she lied about where she lived to get job interviews? "You'd find out that I don't belong in your world," she said finally. "What if I say I don't care about that?" Before she could answer, Isabella's voice interrupted them. "Victor, everyone's looking for you. The auction is about to start." The moment broke. Victor sighed, visibly frustrated, but offered his arm to Jessica. "Let's go back." But this conversation isn't over. As they walked back to the ballroom, Jessica knew she had crossed a dangerous line. Victor Thorne was not just her boss. He was a man who awakened feelings in her that she never thought existed. And even worse, she was beginning to believe that he felt the same way about her. But she was hiding secrets that could destroy everything. And a part of her knew that sooner or later, the truth about who she really was would come to light. The charity auction was underway when everything started to go wrong. Jessica was focused on noting the highest bids for Victor when she noticed a man in a dark suit approaching him urgently. It was Robert, the head of security for the company. "Mr. Thorne," Robert whispered in his ear, "we need to talk. It's urgent." Victor frowned but maintained his composure. "Jessica, come with me." They headed to a private room in the hotel. Robert closed the door, and his expression was grave. "So we received an anonymous tip about an hour ago. Someone is claiming that Ms." He looked at Jessica, "has access to privileged information and is leaking it to competitors." Jessica felt her blood run cold. "What? That's absurd!" "I would never—" "Of course it's absurd," Victor interrupted her, but she noticed a shadow of doubt in his eyes, the same one that had appeared when he spoke about Carolyn. "There's more, sir," Robert continued. "The tip came with photos of Ms. Ramos in compromising locations. Apparently, she was seen talking to Mark Simmons from Simmons and Associates, our main competitor, at a diner downtown last week." Jessica remembered immediately. "I was waiting for the bus. He approached me, introduced himself, asked some work-related questions that I didn't answer and didn't tell me anything about it," Victor said, his voice growing colder. "Because I didn't think it was important. He just made small talk and I left quickly." Robert showed the photos on his phone. They had been taken from a distance, but clearly showed Jessica talking to Mark Simmons. From the angle they were taken, it looked like a friendly meeting. "Sir," Robert continued, "the SEC could open an investigation if this leaks. With your previous history—" "I know the consequences," Victor cut him off sharply. Jessica saw the exact moment Victor's defenses went up again. The green eyes that had looked at her with affection minutes before now studied her with suspicion. It was Caroline happening all over again. "Victor, please, you have to believe me," she pleaded, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I would never do something like that. You know who I am." "Do I?" His question cut like a knife. "You yourself said that I don't really know you." Before Jessica could respond, the door burst open. Isabella entered with a victorious smile on her lips. "Victor, darling, what's going on here? Everyone is commenting that you and your assistant disappeared together." Her eyes sparkled with barely disguised malice. Robert quickly closed his phone, but Isabella had seen the photos. What a delicate situation. Problems with disloyal employees again? The way she said "again" made Jessica understand that Isabella knew all about Caroline and was reveling in the situation. "Isabella, get out of here. Now," Victor ordered. "Of course, darling. But know that there are already rumors circulating in the ballroom. Maybe it's better to resolve this quickly before it reaches the press." She left with the same malicious smile. The silence in the room was deafening. Jessica saw Victor struggling internally. On one side, the feelings he had developed for her. On the other, the trauma of being betrayed before. "I need to think," Victor said finally. "Robert, reinforce security and make sure nothing else leaks." "Jessica," he hesitated, "you're suspended until further notice." "Victor, no." Jessica approached him, touching his arm. "Please don't do this. I'm not like her. I would never betray you." For a moment, feeling her touch, Victor almost gave in. But then he stepped away. "I need to protect the company. I need to protect myself. And me? Who protects me?" The tears were now running freely down Jessica's face. "You're destroying my career, my reputation, based on photos taken out of context. It's a necessary precaution." "It's cowardice," she retorted, her sadness turning into anger. "You're letting the past destroy the present. You're punishing the wrong woman for another's betrayal." Victor seemed to have been slapped. Their eyes met, and for a moment she saw the pain in them. But he didn't back down. "My driver will take you home." Jessica raised her chin, gathering all the dignity she could muster. "I don't need your charity. I'll take the bus, like I always have." She walked to the door, but turned to look at him one last time. "You know what's saddest, Victor? I was starting to fall in love with you, with the man I thought you were behind all that armor. But you're exactly as everyone says, cold and incapable of trusting anyone." And she left, leaving Victor alone with Robert and the weight of his own decisions. In the main ballroom, the guests immediately noticed the tension when Victor returned alone. Isabella was the first to approach. "Where's your little assistant?" she asked with false innocence. "She had to leave early," Victor replied dryly. But the rumors were already starting to spread. Mark Simmons, who had arrived as a last-minute guest, watched everything from afar with interest. He had planted the seeds of distrust and now watched as they grew. Camille Miller approached Victor during dessert. "Everything okay? You seem down." "I'm fine. Where's Jessica? I really liked her." Victor hesitated. "She had to take care of some personal matters." Camille studied him carefully. "Victor, can I give you some unsolicited advice? Sometimes, when we find someone special, our instinct is to protect ourselves. But sometimes, protection can be more destructive than the risk." Her words echoed in Victor's mind for the rest of the night. Meanwhile, Jessica cried on the bus that took her back to Queens. She had lost not only the job of her dreams, but also the man she had fallen in love with. Worse still, she knew that Isabella and her allies wouldn't stop there. They wanted to destroy her completely. When she arrived home, she found Maria waiting up. "Honey, what happened? You look like you've been crying." Jessica broke down in her mother's arms and told her everything. Maria listened in silence, stroking her daughter's hair. "That man loves you, Jessica. I'm sure of it." "How can you be sure?" "A mother knows these things. And men in love do stupid things when they're afraid of getting hurt. The question is, are you going to fight for him?" "Mom, he doesn't trust me." "How can I fight for someone who thinks I'm capable of betrayal?" "Then you're going to prove that you're not. You're going to find out who's behind this and clear your name. And his too." Jessica wiped away her tears and looked at her mother with renewed determination. "You're right. I'm not going to let them destroy my life without a fight." She didn't yet know how, but she would find out who was behind the setup. And she would prove to Victor and to herself that the love she felt for him was real and worth fighting for. However, while she was planning her strategy, Jessica didn't know that the consequences of that night had only just begun. Isabella and Mark were already planning their next move, and Victor, alone in his apartment, was starting to question whether he had made the biggest mistake of his life. The following Monday, Jessica woke up determined to clear her name. She had spent Sunday researching Mark Simmons and his company, discovering a web of suspicious connections with some investors that Victor had turned down in the past. But when she arrived at the Thorne Investments building, the security guard wouldn't let her up. "I'm sorry, Ms. Ramos, Mr. Thorne's orders. Your ID has been cancelled." The humiliation burned in her chest, but she didn't give up. She called the office, but Patricia, who had temporarily returned to cover her absence, coldly said that Victor wasn't taking her calls. Meanwhile, on the 30th floor, Victor could barely concentrate. He had only slept 2 hours, tormented by the image of Jessica's hurt face when he suspended her. Robert had reinforced the investigation, but they still had nothing concrete. "Mr. Thorne," Patricia intercomed, "Ms. Isabella is here to see you." Isabella entered radiantly, wearing a tight red dress that highlighted her intentions. "Victor, darling, I came to check on you. It must have been terrible to discover you were being deceived again, Isabella. I'm not in the mood for... Listen, Vic," she approached, placing her hands on his shoulders. "I know you're hurt, but you need to face reality. This girl was too obvious. She came out of nowhere, without proper references, and you hired her on a whim. You were clearly being manipulated." Victor stepped away from her touch. "Jessica isn't like that. Oh, darling, you're as blind as you were with Caroline." Isabella sighed dramatically. "But don't worry. I've already taken care of everything for you." A sense of alarm crossed Victor. "What do you mean, taken care of everything?" "I have contacts in the press. They'll publish a small item this afternoon about the suspicious assistant who was fired on suspicion of industrial espionage. Nothing too specific, but enough to ensure she won't get another decent job." Victor's blood boiled. "You did what?" "I protected you, like I always do. And now you can hire me as your new personal assistant. Or even better," she approached again, pressing her body against his, "we can finally make our relationship public. We're perfect for each other, Victor. The same social class, the same circles." "Get out of here," Victor said in a dangerously low voice. "Darling, you're upset, but get out!" he shouted, making Isabella recoil. "And if you published anything about Jessica, I guarantee you'll regret." Isabella left with a hurt expression, but in her eyes there was a vengeful gleam that Victor should have noticed. At 3 in the afternoon, the news was online on the city's main gossip website. "Tycoon fires assistant on suspicion of industrial espionage." Source close to Victor Thorne reveals that the businessman, known for his troubled relationship with a treacherous ex-fiancée, was again a victim of a disloyal employee. Victor was furious, but the damage was done. In an hour, the news had spread across social media and business WhatsApp groups. Jessica's phone rang all day. Journalists wanting statements, curious acquaintances, and her mother, worried after seeing neighbors commenting about Maria's famous daughter. Worse still, Mark Simmons personally called Jessica. "Ms. Ramos, Mark Simmons from Simmons & Associates. I saw the news and would like to offer you an opportunity." "I'm not interested," Jessica replied firmly. "Don't be hasty. I know our casual conversation was misinterpreted, but I can offer you a better position than the one you had with Thorne, and with a much higher salary. Thank you, but no. Think about it, Ms. Ramos. After this exposure, hardly anyone will hire you in the financial market. I may be your only option." Jessica hung up, but his words haunted her. He was right. Her reputation was ruined. That night, when Victor finally arrived home, he found Camille Miller waiting in the lobby of his building. "Camille? What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you about Jessica." She was serious, determined. "My father investigated her after you suspended her." "Edward investigated her?" He was intrigued by her at the event and asked a private investigator to check her background. "Victor, you need to know the truth." They went up to Victor's apartment, where Camille spread documents on the table. Jessica Ramos, 28 years old, father died when she was 25, worked 3 jobs simultaneously to pay for college, never had a single negative mark on her professional record, takes care of her sick mother alone, and more importantly, she showed a photo. These are the security camera images from the diner where she met Mark Simmons. Look at her body language, Victor. She's visibly uncomfortable, tries to get up several times. It's not a friendly meeting. Victor studied the images, feeling his chest tighten with guilt. "There's more," Camille continued. "Mark Simmons was seen talking to Isabella at the same hotel where the event was held, 2 hours before the anonymous tip." And Victor, the photos you received were taken with a professional camera, not a casual cell phone. "This was planned." "Isabella," Victor murmured, the pieces finally falling into place. "She orchestrated all of this." Why didn't you trust her? Camille asked softly. Anyone who saw her for 5 minutes would know she's incapable of betrayal. Victor sank onto the sofa, running his hands through his hair. Because I'm an idiot. Because Caroline left me so paranoid that I can no longer distinguish between loyalty and betrayal. And now, after everything Isabella has done to destroy Jessica's reputation, now I'm going to fix it. I'm going to expose Isabella and Mark. I'm going to clear Jessica's name, and he hesitated. I'm going to beg for her forgiveness. But Camille shook her head. It may be too late for that, Victor. The media exposure was devastating. And there's one more thing you need to know. She showed another photo. Jessica leaving a simple residential building in Queens, hugging a gray-haired woman. That's her mother. We found out that Maria has severe arthritis and depends on expensive medication that Jessica buys with her salary. Without a job, Camille didn't need to finish the sentence. The guilt Victor felt turned into despair. He had not only hurt the woman he was falling in love with, he had destroyed her life and that of her family. Meanwhile, across town, Jessica received a call that would make her situation even worse. Ms. Ramos, this is from the law offices of Silverman and Grant. Our client, Mr. Victor Thorne, has instructed us to notify you of a lawsuit for damages to the company's reputation. The initial amount is $500,000. Jessica almost dropped the phone. 500,000? But I didn't do anything. Ma'am, that will be resolved in court. The summons will be delivered tomorrow. When she hung up, Jessica broke down. Not only had she lost her job and had her reputation destroyed, now Victor was filing a lawsuit against her for an amount that would take decades to pay off. Maria found her daughter crying in the kitchen. What is it now, honey? Mom, they want to sue me. Victor, he really believes I betrayed him, and he's going to destroy me financially to prove it. Jessica, are you sure he signed off on this lawsuit? The lawyer said he was instructed by him. Maria hugged her daughter, but both knew the situation had completely spiraled out of control. The forces moving against them were too powerful for two simple women from Queens to face alone. And while Jessica cried in her mother's arms, Victor discovered in his emails a message sent in his name to the law office, authorizing the lawsuit. A message he had never written. Isabella had gained access to the company's system and was using his identity to destroy any chance of reconciliation between Victor and Jessica. And worse still, she was only just beginning. The bomb exploded on Wednesday morning, when the biggest gossip TV show opened with the headline, "Scandal, Tycoon's Assistant Recorded Intimate Conversations for Blackmail." Jessica was having coffee with Maria when her neighbor, Mrs. Davis, called frantically. "Maria, turn on Channel 7, quick! It's about Jessica!" With trembling hands, Maria turned on the television. The host, Alexis Stone, sported a malicious smile as she spoke. Exclusive sources have revealed that Victor Thorne's former assistant, Jessica Ramos, not only leaked confidential information, but also recorded intimate conversations with her boss for possible future blackmail. We have here audio clips that prove the inappropriate romantic involvement between the two. Jessica's heart stopped when she heard her own voice coming from the television. It was the conversation on the hotel balcony during the charity gala, but maliciously edited. The sentences were cut and rearranged to make it seem like she was calculatingly seducing Victor. The edited voice said, "You don't really know me. If I say I don't care, it would be what? Too complicated. You'd find out that I don't belong in your world." And Victor's response, equally manipulated, "You scare me. I can't stop thinking about you. You've messed up my whole life." "Clearly," continued the host, "we see here an employee taking advantage of her position to seduce her millionaire boss, probably with intentions of blackmail or marrying for money." Jessica collapsed on the floor, sobbing. "Mom, I never recorded anything. How did they get this?" Maria helped her up but was equally shocked. "Someone must have recorded you at the hotel." Jessica's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists, curious people offering her money to tell her side of the story. She turned off the device, and locked herself in the bedroom. In the Thorne Investments office, Victor watched the show with a face livid with anger. Robert stood beside him, equally outraged. "Sir, this was clearly edited. I can identify at least 6 points where the audio was cut and reassembled. But who did this? And how did they manage to record a private conversation?" The answer came when Patricia entered the office, visibly nervous. "Mr. Thorne, I need to confess something. Ms. Isabella asked me to install an app on the tablet that Ms. Jessica used to note appointments. She said it was to monitor the performance of the assistants." Victor stood up abruptly. "What kind of app?" One that activated the microphone remotely. She said you had authorized it, but Isabella!" Victor roared, slamming his fist on the table. "Robert, I want that woman away from me and my company, now." But it was already too late. The damage was done, and this time it was public, national. Meanwhile, in Isabella's penthouse in Manhattan, she toasted with champagne alongside Mark Simmons. "Perfect," Mark said, watching the repercussions on social media. "Thorne is emotionally destroyed, and the girl will never be able to work anywhere again. Now I can make my offer to buy his international investment division. And I finally get rid of that intruder and have Victor all to myself," Isabella completed. "He'll need comfort after this scandal, and I'll be there. There's only one problem." Mark frowned, looking at his phone. Victor just released an official statement defending Jessica Ramos and denying any wrongdoing. At the company headquarters, Victor had convened an emergency press conference. With a serious face and firm voice, he spoke before dozens of journalists. "The accusations against Jessica Ramos are completely false and defamatory. She is an honest professional who was the victim of a conspiracy orchestrated to harm my company and destroy the life of an innocent person. I will be taking all legal measures against those responsible for this setup." But his words were interpreted by the media as a desperate attempt to protect an employee with whom he was having an affair. The afternoon headlines were even worse. Tycoon admits affair with assistant and Victor Thorne protects lover accused of blackmail. The situation deteriorated when the district attorney announced that they would open an investigation into possible use of privileged information at Thorne Investments. Shareholders began selling their shares, and the company's stock price plummeted 30% in one day. Edward Miller called Victor in the late afternoon. "Victor, I need to withdraw our fund from your management temporarily. The other investors are pressuring me. It's only until the situation clears up." It was the 5th major investor to withdraw funds that day. Victor mentally calculated if the bleeding continued, he would have to lay off 50% of his employees by the end of the month. Robert entered the office with more bad news. "Sir," Caroline called. Victor felt his blood run cold. His ex-fiancée had disappeared after the scandal 5 years before, when she was discovered selling company information. "What does she want?" "She's back in the States. Said she wants to talk about old times, and that she has information that could shed light on the truth about behavioral patterns. She's blackmailing me." "Seems like it, sir." Said if you don't pay $5 million, she'll give interviews telling intimate details about how you manipulate young female employees. Victor sank back into his chair. Caroline, Isabella, Mark, the media, all joining forces to destroy him. And Jessica was paying the highest price of all. That night, Jessica received the visit she feared. 2 sleek lawyers knocked on her door with a proposal. "Ms. Ramos, we represent a group of investors interested in clarifying the situation. They are willing to pay $200,000 for you to publicly confirm that Victor Thorne harassed you and that you had an inappropriate relationship." "Never," Jessica replied, trying to close the door. "Miss, be realistic. Your reputation is already destroyed. At least get something out of it. And think of your mother. She needs expensive medical treatments, doesn't she?" The mention of her mother made Jessica tremble. "Get out of here. We'll leave our card. When you change your mind, and you will, call us." After they left, Maria approached her daughter. "Jessica, maybe we should consider—" "No, Mom. I'm not going to lie about Victor, even after everything that's happened. He doesn't deserve that. But honey, look at our situation. You can't get a job. They're pressuring me to pay the overdue rent and my medications. Jessica looked at her mother, the strong woman who had always supported her, now frail and worried, and felt her heart break. Maybe she had no choice. That same night, Victor made the most difficult decision of his life. He called the law office that was pursuing the lawsuit against Jessica and asked to withdraw it. He then discovered that the lawsuit had been filed without his authorization, another setup by Isabella. But when he called Jessica's apartment to explain, the call wouldn't go through. The phone had been disconnected for non-payment. He got in his car and drove to Queens, but when he arrived at the address that Robert had managed to get, the apartment was empty. An elderly neighbor told him that Maria and her daughter moved out early this morning. Said they were going upstate. Victor stood in front of the simple building, watching the dark windows of the apartment where the woman he loved had lived. She had fled. He didn't blame her. He had failed to protect her when she needed it most. His cell phone rang. It was a message from an unknown number. Victor, it was a pleasure meeting you. I hope you've learned that some people aren't worthy of your world. Take care. Jay. He reread the message several times, trying to find some clue, some hope. But the cold and formal words didn't sound like the Jessica he knew. Maybe she really had given up on him. What Victor didn't know was that the message had been sent by Isabella, using a clone chip. Jessica and Maria were, in fact, hiding at a cousin's house in upstate New York, without a phone, without money, and without hope. And while Victor returned to his empty apartment, believing he had lost forever the only woman who had managed to touch his heart, the real culprits celebrated their temporary victory, not knowing that they had underestimated both the love and the determination of their victims. 3 weeks had passed since Jessica and Maria had taken refuge at their cousin Lucy's house in upstate New York. The small room in the back of the simple residence was stuffy, and Jessica spent her days surfing the internet at a nearby internet cafe, looking for a job and trying to understand how her life had collapsed so quickly. Honey, you can't keep doing this, Maria said, watching her daughter return once again without news. It's been 3 weeks. You need to fight back. Fight back how, Mom? My name is Mud on the internet. Any employer who Googles me will find articles calling me a blackmailer and an opportunist. Lucy, a pragmatic woman of 50, interrupted the conversation. Jessica, I got a strange call today. A woman asking if you lived here. I didn't give out any information, but she seemed to know details about you. Jessica felt a chill. What kind of details? She knew about Maria's arthritis, about your previous job, said she had a proposal for you. That night, Jessica couldn't sleep. There was something strange about this whole situation. Why were they continuing to pursue her, even after she had completely disappeared from Victor's life? And who else would benefit from her destruction? The next morning, she made a decision that would change everything. She took her last savings and returned to New York City, but not to give up. She was going to fight. Her first stop was a cafe in Midtown, where she arranged to meet the only person who could help her, Camille Miller. She had gotten her contact information through a social network and, to her surprise, Camille had accepted the meeting immediately. Jessica! Thank God you're okay. We've all been looking for you, Camille said, hugging her tight. You? Me, my dad, and especially Victor. He's desperate, Jessica. Doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, just works trying to find out who did this to you. Jessica felt her heart clench, but forced herself to stay focused. Camille, I need your help. Not to win Victor back, but to discover the truth. Someone orchestrated all of this, and I need to know who and why. Camille leaned forward, interested. What have you found out? Nothing yet. But I have a theory. Isabella obviously hates me, but she alone wouldn't have the resources to set up something so elaborate. It needs someone with power, money, and access to information. Mark Simmons? Exactly. But I need to prove it. And for that, I need someone who has access to their circles. Camille smiled for the first time. You've come to the right person. My father has contacts everywhere, and well, let's just say I have a penchant for investigations. They spent the afternoon planning. Camille revealed that her father had suspected Mark Simmons for years, suspecting that he obtained privileged information through questionable methods. There's an event tomorrow night, Camille said. Charity dinner at the Museum of Modern Art. Mark will be there, Isabella too. It's our chance to observe them. I can't appear publicly. Anyone would recognize me. Leave that to me. The next night, Jessica didn't recognize herself in the mirror. Camille had hired a complete makeover team, platinum blonde and short hair, dramatic makeup that completely changed her features, non-prescription glasses, and an elegant but discreet black dress. She was using the alias Carol Manning, supposedly a freelance journalist specializing in society news. Remember, Camille instructed her as they arrived at the event, you're an investigative journalist. Stay close enough to hear, but don't draw attention. The plan worked perfectly. No one recognized Jessica, and she was able to circulate freely through the event. When she located Isabella and Mark talking in a secluded corner of the terrace, her heart raced. Victor is more vulnerable than ever, Isabella was saying, sipping champagne. He's lost 3 major clients this week. Perfect. My purchase offer is ready. With the stock price in the gutter, I can acquire the international division for a fraction of its real value, Mark replied. And the girl? Neutralized, but we need to make sure she doesn't resurface. Caroline is taking care of that part. Jessica almost dropped her glass. Caroline, Victor's ex-fiancée, was involved? Is Caroline reliable? Isabella asked. She hates Victor as much as we do. And she needs money. She's willing to do anything to completely destroy him. Mark lowered his voice. In fact, she has a brilliant idea. She's going to look for the girl and offer her a partnership. Pretend she wants to help her get revenge on Victor, gain her trust, and then she's going to record her confessing that she really leaked information or had an affair with Victor. With that confession, we can finally destroy him beyond recovery. Jessica felt nauseous. It was a trap within a trap. They hadn't just destroyed her, they were preparing a final blow. She slipped away quietly and found Camille near the bar. We need to leave now. In the taxi back, Jessica told her everything she had heard. Camille turned pale. Jessica, this is more serious than we imagined. They don't just want to keep you away from Victor. They want to completely destroy his company. But why? Mark has always been second best at everything. While Victor shone, he remained in the shadows. And Isabella? She's been obsessed with Victor for years, probably ever since he rejected her. Arriving home, they found Lucy nervous. Jessica, a woman called again. This time she identified herself. Caroline Almeida said she's coming by tomorrow for a proposal that will change your life. Jessica and Camille exchanged glances. The trap was closing. I'm not going to meet her, Jessica said. I know it's a setup. No, Camille held her arm. You are going to meet her. But not alone and not unprepared. Camille took out her cell phone and made a call. Dad, I need your help. And maybe it's time to call Victor too. No, Jessica protested. I don't want to involve Victor in this. I've caused him enough trouble already. Jessica, you haven't caused any trouble. You were a victim, and Victor has the right to know that he's been manipulated for weeks. Edward Miller arrived an hour later, accompanied by 2 private investigators and a lawyer specializing in digital crimes. They transformed Lucy's small living room into an operations center. Jessica, Edward said gently, I know you're hurt and suspicious, but Victor had nothing to do with the lawsuit against you. It was all forged. He's suffering as much as you are. That doesn't change the fact that he didn't trust me when I needed him most, she replied, but her voice no longer had anger, only sadness. And it doesn't change the fact that you both were victims of a very well-crafted conspiracy, the lawyer added. But now we have a chance to expose everything. Would you be willing to wear a recorder when Caroline comes to visit? Jessica hesitated. It would be dangerous, but perhaps it was the only way to clear her name and protect Victor. Yes, she said finally. I'll do it. Camille smiled and took her hand. You're not alone in this fight, Jessica. You never have been. While they planned every detail of the meeting with Caroline, 50 miles away, Victor was in his empty office, looking out the window at the illuminated city. He had lost 2 more clients that day, and the company's board was pressuring him to resign temporarily. His phone rang. It was Robert. "Sir, we have news about Miss Jessica." Victor's heart raced. "Did you find her?" "Not exactly, but we discovered something important. And you're going to want to sit down to hear this." Caroline arrived the next morning, driving a black BMW, wearing expensive sunglasses and a calculating smile. She was still a beautiful woman at 35, but there was something cold in her blue eyes that made Jessica shiver. "Jessica Ramos," she said, extending her hand with false cordiality. "We finally meet. I'm Caroline, Victor's ex-fiancée." Jessica shook her hand, feeling the small recorder hidden in her bra. Edward and his investigators were in a van parked around the corner, monitoring everything. "I know who you are," Jessica replied, leading her to the small living room. "So you know that I understand exactly what you're going through." Caroline sat down, crossing her legs elegantly. "Victor Thorne has a gift for making women fall in love with him and then discarding them when they become inconvenient." "I don't know what you're talking about." Caroline laughed, a humorless sound. "Please, dear, I saw the news. I know you two had an affair. And I know he abandoned you at the first sign of trouble, just like he did to me." Jessica forced herself to look interested. "How so?" 5 years ago, I was engaged to him. I thought it was true love, but Victor only wanted a trophy wife. When I discovered some irregularities in his business and threatened to expose them, he turned me into the villain of the story, made up that I was selling information to competitors. "And were you?" Caroline hesitated for a fraction of a second, enough to confirm Jessica's suspicions. "Of course not. But he has contacts in the media, expensive lawyers. He managed to reverse the narrative and make me flee the country. And why have you come back now?" "Because I saw in the news that he did the same thing to you. And I can't let him continue destroying innocent women." Caroline leaned forward, adopting a conspiratorial tone. "Jessica, I have a proposal. Let's unite against him. I have documents that prove the true irregularities of Thorne Investments, and you have access to the latest information. Together, we can expose Victor publicly and still get out of this situation with good financial compensation." "Compensation from whom?" "Let's just say I have investors interested in buying parts of Victor's company for a price far below market value. If we collaborate to further weaken his reputation, these investors will pay generously for our help." Jessica felt nauseous. "You're talking about Mark Simmons, aren't you?" Caroline didn't hide her surprise. "How did you—" "Well, it doesn't matter. Yes, Mark is one of those interested. And Isabella is in on this too. We all have reasons to want to see Victor pay for what he's done. And what exactly do you want me to do?" "Simple. You're going to give an exclusive interview confirming that you had an affair with Victor, that he sexually pressured you, and that you discovered that he manipulates market information. With your confession, we can finally destroy him completely. And if I don't want to do that?" Caroline's smile disappeared. "Jessica, be realistic. Your reputation is already ruined. You have no money, no job, and your mother needs expensive medical care. This is your only chance to get out of this situation with dignity and enough money to start a new life far from New York City." Jessica pretended to consider the proposal. "How much are we talking?" $1 million. Half now, half after the interview airs. That's a lot of money for just an interview, because it's not just an interview, dear. It's the final destruction of Victor Thorne. And that's worth a lot to my associates." Jessica took a deep breath. It was the confession she needed. "Caroline, can I ask you a question? Did you really love Victor once?" "Love?" Caroline laughed bitterly. "Love is for romantics. I wanted the lifestyle he could offer. And when he rejected me, I decided that if I couldn't have him, no one could. So you orchestrated all of this. The photos at the diner, the edited recording, even the anonymous tip." Caroline studied her carefully. "You're smarter than I imagined. Yes, it was all carefully planned. Mark wanted the financial information and the opportunity to buy the company cheap. Isabella wanted to get you out of the way, to have Victor all to herself. And I wanted revenge. And you don't care how many innocent people you destroy in the process. Innocent? Caroline stood up, irritated. Victor isn't innocent. He's a cold and calculating man who uses people and discards them. And you, dear, were just another pawn in the game. Maybe you're right about Victor being calculating, Jessica said, also standing up. But there's a difference between being calculating in business and being cruel to innocent people. And you, Caroline, crossed that line a long time ago. What are you insinuating? Well, I'm insinuating that this whole conversation has been recorded and that the investigators who are in the van outside already have enough evidence to incriminate you for defamation, conspiracy and extortion. Caroline's face paled. You can't prove anything. Actually, she can. Victor's voice came from the doorway. He entered accompanied by Edward, Robert, 2 police officers, and Camille. Caroline recoiled, the panic evident in her eyes. Victor, this is a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding was me believing you had changed, Victor replied, but his eyes were fixed on Jessica. Thank you, he said softly to her. Don't thank me yet, Jessica replied, avoiding his gaze. I did this to clear my name, not to save you. One of the officers approached Caroline with handcuffs. Caroline Almeida, you're under arrest for racketeering, defamation, extortion, and use of forged documents. As Caroline was led away, screaming threats and accusations, Edward coordinated with the other investigators. We have everything recorded. Mark Simmons and Isabella will be arrested later today. And my legal situation? Jessica asked. Completely resolved, the lawyer replied. All lawsuits against you will be dropped, and you can still file lawsuits for damages against the real culprits. When everyone left, leaving only Victor and Jessica in the small living room, the silence became deafening. Victor began, but she interrupted him. No, let me speak first. She turned to face him, her eyes shining with restrained tears. You hurt me, Victor. When I needed someone to believe in me the most, you chose your suspicions and your past over the woman who was standing right in front of you. Victor lowered his head. I know, and I have no excuse for that. You don't, but she hesitated. I understand why you did it. Caroline really hurt you, and I know my past, my humble beginnings, must have made you question whether I was sincere. Your past was never a problem for me, Jessica. The problem was always me. My fear of being betrayed again made me betray the most honest person I've ever known. They stood in silence for long moments, the weight of everything that had happened between them. What do we do now? Jessica asked softly. Now I beg for your forgiveness, and I ask for a chance to prove that the man you started to fall in love with still exists, just more hurt and wiser. Jessica studied him carefully. She saw the sincerity in his green eyes, the vulnerability he rarely showed, and the love that, despite everything, she still felt for him. Victor Thorne, she said, taking a step towards him, you are the most frustrating, complicated, and impossible man I've ever known. His heart clenched, preparing for the final rejection. And even so, she continued, delicately touching his face, I couldn't stop loving you for a second, even when I should have. Victor closed his eyes, resting his face in her hand. Jessica, I love you. I love your honesty, your strength, your compassion. I love how you fight for your family, how you face challenges without losing your dignity. I love how you make me want to be a better man. And I love you, she whispered, even with all your faults and fears. I love your passion for business, your loyalty to those you love, and I love how you make me feel special and valued. When he kissed her, it was as if all the pain of the past weeks dissolved. It was a kiss that spoke of forgiveness, of true love, and of a promise of a future together. Marry me, Victor murmured against her lips. Jessica laughed through her tears. Are you sure? I'm just a girl from Queens who's going to bring a lot of drama to your perfect life. My life is only perfect with you in it. And as for the drama, he smiled, I think we've already been through the worst. 6 months later, St. Patrick's Cathedral was filled with guests for the most talked-about wedding of New York high society. Jessica, radiant in a pure silk wedding dress, walked down the aisle accompanied by Maria, who was crying with emotion. Victor waited for her at the altar, impeccable in his tuxedo, but with eyes moist with emotion. Beside him stood Edward Miller as best man and Camille as Jessica's maid of honor. I, Victor, take you, Jessica, to be my wife, he said with a firm voice during the vows. I promise to love you, protect you, and trust you forever, in joy and in hardship. I, Jessica, take you, Victor, to be my husband, she replied, smiling through her tears. I promise to love you, support you, and be your partner at all times, in achievements and in challenges. When they kissed after being declared husband and wife, the entire church applauded. Isabella had been sentenced to 3 years in prison. Mark Simmons lost his company amidst the legal scandals, and Caroline was serving time for racketeering. At the reception at the Plaza Hotel, the same location where everything started to go wrong, but now the setting for their happiness, Victor stood up to make a speech. A year ago, I was a man who believed that success was measured only in numbers and profits. Today, looking at my wife, I understand that true wealth lies in the people we love and who love us back. He looked at Jessica, who was radiant beside him. Jessica taught me that it's worth taking risks when it comes to true love, and that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. Jessica stood up and took the microphone. When I met Victor, I thought he lived in a world different from mine. And I was right. But I learned that love builds bridges between different worlds. Victor showed me that I can dream beyond my limitations, and I hope I've shown him that true happiness has no social class. They toasted surrounded by family and genuine friends, having overcome not only the traps of enemies, but also their own insecurities and fears. 2 years later, Victor and Jessica were on the balcony of their new house in Connecticut, watching the sunset while their 6-month-old daughter, Helena, slept in her mother's arms. Maria, who now lived with them and had fully recovered from arthritis with the best medical treatment, was preparing dinner in the kitchen. Do you regret anything? Jessica asked, adjusting the baby in her arms. Only that it took me so long to trust you completely, Victor replied, kissing her forehead. And you? Nothing. Not even the bad parts. They made us stronger. Victor looked at his family, his brave wife, his perfect daughter, his mother-in-law, who treated him like a son, and knew he had found something more valuable than any business empire, a home built with true love. I love you, Jessica Thorne. I love you too, Victor Thorne. And as they watched the sun set over the ocean, both knew they had proven that true love, when faced with courage and honesty, can overcome any obstacle and transform even the most wounded hearts into stories of lasting happiness.